We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
You mix things up, you make them play your game. That's where the magic happens. And at least on that Sunday, man, it worked in their favor.
It's September 2008, Dolphins at Patriots. This is Remember That Game, podcast about sporting events that take you on a journey and maybe chart the path of the zeitgeist. I'm your host, Thomas Emerick, and my guest is Fantasy Life senior analyst Ian Hartitz. We're heading back to Wildcat season. On rewatch, did it feel more like a fever dream as it's sometimes described, or instead more of a new waking reality that NFL defenses will have to deal with?
It does feel more like a fever dream. I mean, just the perfect meeting of two teams that were going in absolute opposite directions, culminating in 60 minutes of football that I don't think anyone could have seen coming, man. Just, again, you have the most coached, the team of just the almost back-to-back decades of the 2000s, 2010s against the, Dolphins squad that had lost 21 of their last 22 games. Like Belichick himself said it after the game, man, like they got not only outplayed, but they got outcoached. Like for 60 minutes, hey, they took down the Patriots, the big bad boss in the AFC East, but I'm not sure if there's a team on planet Earth that was taking down those 2008 Dolphins for that specific 60 minutes of time.
Early on, the announcers were talking about how the previous week, the Dolphins, it had been an annihilation as the CBS bumper music plays. Annihilation, Dolphins. Outgained like 445 to 236 against Kurt Warner, who I guess is still in the league with the Cardinals the previous week. And getting torched like that, going in 0-2. Patriots had lost Brady, but they're 2-0. Still have Moss and Welker, 12.5-point favorites.
Dude, it was completely shocking. You said it, 12.5. I mean, these guys were plus 500 underdogs. The Patriots hadn't lost in Foxborough since November 12th, 2006. They hadn't lost a regular season game since 2006. I mean, yes, Brady was gone at this point, but still, man, looked like Matt Castle and company were just keeping on. So, again, it was just having just these complete losers versus the absolute juggernauts. Hey, worked out for the Wildcat on that lovely Sunday. So, I will say, in hindsight, there was a little bit more evidence of, the Wildcat at least existing, in a couple of occasions. But back in 2008, bro, it was a little bit harder to, exactly just get on Twitter or YouTube even and go exactly search for this stuff. So, I'm doing some research on was this actually the first Wildcat game? It certainly made it famous, and we saw the rest of the league, throughout the rest of 08 and 09, kind of going through there, certainly take over. But you see instances of D'Angelo Williams in 2006 had this random drive for the Panthers where they used it 7 times and ended up scoring a touchdown. And then in 1998, the Falcons I think the Vikings actually used it. And then the NFC Championship, the Falcons kind of used it against them. And obviously the other example that I think was most prominent was the Wild Hog at Arkansas with Darren McFadden doing his thing with Felix Jones. So the reason I bring all that up is because David Lee, the quarterback coach, was at Arkansas when they ran the Wild Hog. And then Dan Henning, the OC for the Dolphins, was on that D'Angelo Williams Panthers team. So as much as, may he rest in peace, Tony Sparano deserves a ton of credit for giving this the okay. It really was, just the nucleus of Tony Sparano, David Lee, and Dan Henning. putting this together and having the guts to go out there and try it, man. Cause that was the really funny part, shout out to KTO, really good YouTube channel, and they had a fun kind of just overall documentary on this game and some of the stuff that happened after. But like the Dolphins defensive players, I believe it was their linebacker, Shannon Crowder. Yeah. He was being interviewed about it. And he said like literally every time they tried this in practice, the defense just blew it up. And he was even joking about how like when they called this play in the game, the first one they did was like from the 2-yard line. He said the entire defense like got up off the bench to go watch because they were just ready to see the offense fall flat in their face. So amazingly, like the only people that might have been more surprised than the Patriots that this worked was actually the Dolphins defense themselves.
Dolphins defense just lining up on the sideline, ready to watch the offense eat shit like they had in various other forms the past couple of weeks. Tony Sparano, what a way to go after his first career win against the 21 consecutive win Patriots. And in Foxborough is where he breaks it out. And, and you talk about that, those coaching connections, they'll unveil a little bit later here, but the announcers will be like, ooh, it's a Darren McFadden wild hog action. All right.
Yeah, I heard the announcer bring that up in real time. I was like, hey, good job by you pulling that one. But yeah, man, again, it was a brilliant strategy just going in. It reminded me, Michael Lombardi used to always bring it up. He's been on a million podcasts over the years, but when he used to do a GM Street, he always talked about this old Mark Twain quote about how the best swordsman in the world doesn't fear the second best swordsman. They fear more the the unorthodox swordsman that actually comes in there and is doing different stuff. And I think you see that a lot in, MMA fights as well, where like, yeah, if you're trying to go to the Patriots and you're just trying to win our best 11 versus their best 11, like guess what? They're going to beat you 9 times out of 10, but you mix things up, you make them play your game. That's where the magic happens. And at least on that Sunday, man, it worked in their favor.
To start off, it didn't seem like a batshit crazy result. It seemed like a normal 12.5 point favorite controlling the action. On the Patriots' second drive, 6-minute drive, it looks like they're going to go up 7-0. Matt Castle in the grasp of Joey Porter, who Porter before the game said, it's not Tom Brady. How hard can it be? Porter backs it up, gets to the quarterback. The refs call it down. Matt Castle then
horrible call.
Matt Castle runs to the end zone. Well, I mean, and given that Brady had been injured 2 weeks prior, do you feel like that gives the refs a little more leeway to do whatever they can to stop him?
Bro, like this wasn't even Eli versus the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Like he was barely in the grasp. I don't know if he would have scored the touchdown because it looked like, there were multiple members in the secondary that like stopped when the whistle went, which kind of makes sense. But at a minimum, man, shouldn't have been a loss of 4. And then for, his screen pass to get picked off on the very next play. I mean, I don't want to say that swung the game because obviously, we saw it was a 25-point beatdown. Like it's probably not something that necessarily leads to a Patriots victory if it goes the other way. But it certainly was that nice little early jolt, of momentum because again, I mean, 3 and out for the Dolphins on their first drive. Things weren't certainly going good, but turned around in a hurry.
Castle's actually involving Randy Moss this drive. They design plays to get, basically roll out and hit Moss with the easy passes. Castle pregame telling the media, it's not my job to get Moss the ball. That's McDaniel's job. On 3rd and goal from the 16, Randy Starks for the Dolphins seems like the Dolphins are like, they know they don't have as much confidence in Castle as Brady. From the 16, this shit's a screen. And middle screen it is. Starks picks it off. The next drive, it looks like the announcers again, hey, this anemic offense, they got a 3rd and 6. Our main worry today is that the Dolphins defense will get tired because the Dolphins defense will get tired because the offense can't stay on the field. 3rd and 6, Pennington up the seam to Anthony Fasano. 24 yards, lowering the boom on Brandon Merriweather at the end of it. Fasano, another deep completion that drive to get them down to the goal line where they might try out a new formation. Do you remember Anthony Fasano being that nice?
Bro, I just remember because I'm sadly a long-time Cowboys fan. I started watching football in 2000, so I'm not even the asshole, 90s kid who got to see all the Super Bowls. I've just been in a pit of misery for that experience. But, bro, Cowboys had Jason Witten obviously doing his thing for like 15 years, but they kept using these 2nd-round picks on tight ends like Anthony Fasano, Martellus Bennett, Gavin Escobar was out there for a little bit. I think RIP to him as well, man. God damn, going through a lot of these guys. But yeah, man, it was one of those things where like Fasano doesn't do anything in Dallas. And yeah, he's playing behind Jason Witten, but then he goes to Miami. And to your credit, man, ends up, doing some good things for himself. So tight ends, man, especially back then when teams weren't as pass happy, like it was harder to just look at a player's, receiving yards and touchdowns and totally glean that. Would have been nice to maybe have some of those PFF grades going on back in the day. But hey, dude ended up carving out, nice little 12-year career for himself. Certainly made a number of big plays that Sunday.
Anthony Fasano gets us down to the goal line. A nice little drive by Chad Pennington dealing before the rush offense opened up. And on the goal line, they do a normal handoff to Ronnie Brown, stuffed. So far this game, I think his first carry, rookie Gerard Mayo bottles him up. On second down, they try something a little different, something called the Wildcat, where Gerard Mayo gets a rude introduction to the NFL this game, but also veteran players, Bruschi, Vrabel, they get a rude introduction to the Wildcat.
Yeah, and they were just so shocked at that point. I mean, I think the famous play is years later, Dolphins run the Wildcat and Cutler's just standing out there with his hands on his hip. So back then, though, I mean, they legit looked at Pennington and, they put a cornerback on him and just, respected them as a player. And that is where the, brilliance of it came into it, because obviously quarterbacks just usually are not, at least back then, weren't factoring into any given run play. So you're forcing offenses to play 10 versus 11 pretty much with everything that's going on. But when you have Pennington getting covered up by the corner, and then you're adding in the read option element where we had Ricky Williams screaming across the formation and Ronnie's actually reading the defensive end, almost like an inverted veer sort of motion that they got going on. Like they actually were able to run the ball with numbers in their favor. And I mean, he walked right in the end zone, man. And I mean, the other ones, like the passing touchdown later was obviously sweet, and the long touchdown run was nice, but even on the long touchdown run, he had to break a tackle like 10 yards downfield. They had a counter that was kind of sniffed out, but it was just the ease with that initial rushing touchdown, man. Obviously set the table for the entire game.
CBS breaks the Dolphins a surprising 7-3 lead. Two teams trade field goals throughout the second quarter, and then we get near halftime again. They actually get down there because Ronnie Brown actually gives on the jet sweep to Ricky Williams for a long gain.
Oh, yeah, bro. I mean, I always try to give him a shout out on 420 every year. Greatest quote ever. He got high and forgot he wasn't supposed to get high out there. Who's amongst us hasn't, had something like that go down over the years. But no, man, it is wild how this really was the beginning, and everyone's like, oh yeah, Ricky's back now. This is freaking awesome, because he only played that one game in 2007 after being suspended for all of 2006. And for him to still have that juice, man, literally gets run down in those final 2 years in Miami, retires, and gets suspended. I mean, how many running backs can actually basically have 3 entire years out of the league and then come back and still, be as good as Ricky was? Because he was really good in 08, and then even 09 had another good year for himself. So, I mean, obviously at Texas, some of the things he was able to do there, great player. And even if, maybe didn't live up to, Dick trading his entire freaking draft for him, who couldn't under that circumstance? But yeah, man, just awesome. And, again, one of the things that was cool from the interview, or at least one of the things that Channing Crowder was saying, just in his mind, Ronnie Brown and Ricky Williams were the entire team's 2 best players. So, hey, you're trying to devise an offense around what your players do best. Way to go.
Throw in the kitchen sink at the Patriots when it comes to these 2 players. Encapsulated in this one play, you have the read Brown to Ricky, and then Brown might roll out and throw it later to Fasano. We'll see. But for the second touchdown, it's right after Williams takes the jet sweep. They get down there, and this time it's fake, and no one's home for the Patriots as Brown goes up the middle. Were you a bigger fan of him than the other guys in that 05 top 5 running back draft class? Were you a Cadillac guy? Were you a Sad Benson guy? Or were you a Ronnie Brown guy?
What a freaking time. I was partial towards Cadillac. I didn't have a better reason other than just first team all name in NFL history. Also, he's the Raiders RB coach now after doing his thing at Auburn. So pretty cool to still see him around the league. But yeah, man, literally, like you said, 3 running backs in the top 5 of the 2005 draft. We've only had 6 total go in the top 5 since, and only 11 since 2000 overall. So just again, wish that we could have been in a social media era where 3 running backs go out the board in the top 5 picks. But it was funny, kind of prepping for this pod and looking back at those 3 running backs. I mean, if you would have just kind of taken like, all right, who's had the best career after the rookie year? I mean, that was Cadillac going out there doing his thing and having his best year. But then, my God, man, torn right patellar tendon in 2007, and then tears his left one 15 months later. You see that happen. And then Ronnie Brown, man, same freaking thing. Like, to have season-ending knee injuries in 07 and 09. It was actually great we did get this Wildcat season. I mean, he had a nice comeback, but dude, like before he got hurt in 2007, my man's had 991 yards in the first 7 games. So Ronnie really did seem like he was on pace to be that guy. But as we've seen with so many running backs, man, just couldn't quite get it going. So the injury gods had chilled out. I think Ronnie probably would have had the best overall NFL career. But as things turned out, man, it was probably Cedric Benson. He didn't get there, necessarily with the Bears. But for him to actually go out there with the Bengals and rip off 3 straight seasons with over 1,000 yards, I mean, sadly, his own worst enemy was some of the, just things he had going on with the Bears off the field and everything. But rest in peace, Cedric Benson. Man, we better not ever do one of these from the 80s or something. We're just going to be saying RIP after every player. But yeah, I mean, hey, all 3 guys, I think they each in their own way proved that they were talented enough to be going that high, but also, some of the reasons why I think teams nowadays are obviously far more hesitant to use that high of a pick on running backs, just so much tougher to stay healthy.
We at least got Tony Sparano living on, and his son, offensive line coach for the Colts, doing a great job bringing that line back last year. And you really see the beauty on some of these runs where you have like Smiley pulling. First overall pick, Jake Long. Yeah. So far, it's open lanes. Though in the third quarter in the red zone, Patriots do a decent job snuffing it out. But wait, Brown's keeping it. I'm not sure who has responsibility, if anyone, to guard Anthony Fasano on the flag there. But easy touchdown, Ronnie Brown to Anthony Fasano. We're up 28-6 now on the Patriots. It's 12.5-point dogs. What's the influence, the college concepts that end up coming to the NFL, or like, Chip Kelly getting people to actually respect, Nick Foles on a read option? Is there a line to draw for to things like that?
Yeah, I think it's the read option element. I mean, we saw, again, shout out KTO, but the league definitely was copycatting the Wildcat initially, but nowadays it's never become an actual piece of the offense like it was here. It's just more of a gimmicky, kind of play here and there. Yeah, the Eagles in the Super Bowl, Philly special, were able to make, an addition of it work and stuff, but more so as just, that trick play. But it's that bringing the option element to football. I mean, this wasn't a thing in the NFL, even like Mike. And that's why, honestly, like comparing, guys like, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen to Mike Vick falls a little flat for me, because at least early on in Vick's career, he was doing almost everything just on scrambles. This wasn't a league that had embraced option football. And that is where I think the Wildcat really helped open the door for read options, as we later saw RPOs in general. So it's a shame that it didn't work out as well as, some of us envisioned with Pat White in future years. I mean, talk about just an electric college quarterback, and for him to go to Miami, it just seemed like the best situation possible. But man, just having the ability, as Ronnie Brown at least proved, a couple times there, to throw the football. I mean, that was just the final step of it, taking the athlete who also can throw the football and embracing that rushing element. And that's what I think it's left out of so many conversations with these quarterbacks, where when you have guys like Lamar, like Jalen Hurts, like even Justin Fields, Cam Newton over the years, like, how many of these freaking graphics only show their passing numbers against each other, and they leave out the 500 plus rushing yards and however many touchdowns? And even past that, like every single year, look at the rushing yards before contact leaderboards, and you see teams with dual threat quarterbacks at the top because of the gravity they have in the run game, forcing defensive ends to stay home and accordingly opening up those lanes. So again, this was one of those situations where, no, it didn't see this specific play necessarily change the league, 10 years later, but it did help, I think, push forward the idea that, hey, we get a mobile quarterback back there. It really can open a lot of things up.
We somehow got Nick Foles in read option situations with both Chip Kelly and Doug Peterson at totally different stages. incredible concept can do that, given how statuesque he is. Got me a little wistful thinking about some of those electric players cut down by injuries, two of the more violent career changers with Pat White and Cadillac Williams. But going to a less electric quarterback, Matt Castle, he eventually finds Jabbar Gaffney for touchdown to cut the deficit. Up to that point, you have a couple throws behind Welker that somehow aren't turned into interceptions. Not the same timing that Brady has across the middle. It has one to Randy Moss, where the announcers are complaining that Moss didn't go for it, but it was definitely a hospital ball. Ronaldo Hill was just going to wreck him, and Randy Moss is too old to catch a hospital ball from Matt Castle at this point. Meanwhile, Chad Pennington is just dealing over the middle of the field. Has this game led to any sort of reappraisal for you of these two quarterbacks, Pennington and Castle?
I'll give Castle credit because he really was more. I mean, I remembered him as more of a one-year wonder, but he went out there for Kansas City a couple years later, man, and threw 27 touchdowns. So my man's went on to make, I wrote it down, $65 million throughout his career. And, this really was the start of getting to do that. So, yes, obviously pretty cushy supporting cast, gets Welker and Moss, the reigning undefeated Patriots out there. So I think his life, was made, pretty easy for him. But again, to go out there in Kansas City and prove just to be more than a one-year wonder, I mean, that's a hell of a lot more than most seventh-round picks end up getting on. So Pennington's the one who I think, could have potentially almost been a better quarterback in modern-day football, because the whole thing you just heard about him, I felt like, was just this noodle arm guy who was never throwing downfield and all that. But he was a system quarterback who wasn't always in great systems. But I think Pennington in today's age could be someone like a Tua Tagovailoa, like a Brock Purdy, where if you surround him in a smart offense with good playmakers, man, he's as accurate as they come, and he can get the ball out there. So, I mean, he averaged 7.2 yards per attempt for his career in a different era where that really is an impressive number. I mean, led the league in completion rates several times. And you look at these teams, man. This Dolphins team's number one wide receiver is Ted Ginn Jr. easily. This is a young version of my dude, Teddy Ginn. I mean, his best years with the Jets was when he had Santana Moss and Lavernius Coles, and then both guys ended up going to Washington after a couple years. So with Pennington, when he was in a decent enough offense, I think he was making plays. And, it's one of those things where you look at the Jets and you look at the Dolphins over the past 25 years, and, when we're not exactly seeing any quarterbacks working out, I start to wonder, all right, are we going to keep criticizing every X variable that comes through here and plays quarterback? Or at some point, do we take a longer look at, the team environment that keeps on messing up? Similar sentiment, obviously, with, Washington, Cleveland, and the Chicago Bears of the world, too.
I'll lay some respect at Matt Castle's name, the 2010 AFC West champion, Matt Castle. Yeah. Chad Pennington would win himself a division title here with the Dolphins against great odds. Of course, Brady goes down week 1, but there's another team in the division that's supposed to be ascendant with their new quarterback, Brett Favre, after Brady goes down. Jets had just kicked Pennington to the curb. The Dolphins coming out of nowhere to win the division title. I mean, if you're a Dolphins fan here, could there be anything more satisfying? Stick it to these two teams in this way.
Yeah, and to take down the Jets in week 17 as well, man. This is the only non-Patriots AFC East crown from 2003 to 2019, which is absolutely ridiculous. Now, we have Bills Mafia going out there and winning it every year. But yeah, the 2008 Dolphins team, man, it's literally like their brightest spot of the past 2.5 decades. This team hasn't won a playoff game since 2000. Longest streak. We got Mike McDaniel out here forcing their team meetings to start at 25 minutes after the hour, just so he can remind everyone how long it's been since they've won a playoff game. So again, clock struck midnight on this fairy tale season in the playoffs and everything. They didn't achieve all that much in January, but man, just to take down the Pats and the Jets. I mean, they have the Patriots out there winning, I think 11 games that year, and they didn't make the playoffs. I mean, just absolutely wild to rob them of that and division title. And yeah, to your point, the Chad Pennington Jets angle, I completely forgot we even had that going on the year right after. So just again, icing on the cake of it. It's got it. I would imagine, for at least Dolphins fans that have been watching football kind of around the same amount I have. I mean, these last 2 years have been a lot of fun with McDaniel putting up all the points, but that 2008 season, especially considering the porous, low expectations going into it, that's got to have been the most fun that they ever had.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Jewelry can say many things on your wedding day. As a wedding band, it can say, "This is a forever symbol of our forever love." As a gift to your wedding party, it can say, "Thanks for standing up there with us." Blue Nile can help you find the piece that says it all and says it beautifully, with expert guidance and a wide assortment of jewelry of the highest quality at the best price. Go to BlueNile.com and experience the convenience of shopping Blue Nile, the original online jeweler since 1999. That's BlueNile.com.
The Jets, you got to be impressed. They never rerun the script on how their misery will come each season. The Brett Favre one, it's just another unique way for it to go, losing head-to-head to Chad Pennington. Folks can also check out the last episode me and Ian did together back in season 1 of Remember That Game. We did a Stevie going off against Darrelle Revis. The Dolphins receivers, what they had going there was probably, showed this what the ceiling would be come the playoffs. Ravens just wrecked them. The Wildcat does get stifled a little bit later in the season in the rematch against the Patriots and in that wild card game against the Ravens. But it seemed like Ted Ginn is just electric player, and then Devon Bess, undrafted free agent. People aren't buying that. The all-time leading receiver for the Rainbow Warriors, but they people discount them throwing the ball around, slinging it all day like they did at Aloha Stadium. Devon Bess feels like a waiver fixation. Ted Ginn seems like someone that might be a stash. Were either of those guys or anyone from this game stashes or waiver fascinations for you back then?
Man, those Colt Brennan Hawaii teams were elite. Oh, man, I wish that Georgia one had gone a little different. But we can't have all nice things in life. But, man, no, as I live in Columbus, Ohio now, grew up here, heavy majority of my life here, obviously Ted Ginn Jr., my freaking guy. And for what he did at Ohio State, man, he literally returned, I think it was 6 kicks and punts for touchdowns as a freshman coming out there. And then, for him to actually emerge as a legit, wide receiver one, at least in college, him and Antonio Holmes and Anthony Gonzalez, did a ton of good things on those awesome Buckeye teams. But yeah, man, I definitely thought that Ted Ginn, especially later in his career when he was actually the number 1 in Carolina and he was the number 2 on some of those Saints teams, he always looked like one of those guys where, I always say I said about Will Fuller, I'm saying about James Cook a lot this offseason. It's one of those things where it's look, I understand he dropped all these touchdowns, but do you know how hard it is to get open enough to drop the touchdown in the first place? So that's where it comes with Teddy. And I just think, he's one of these guys where I think some people want to throw him into the bust category, but he was absolutely an elite returner at the NFL level. He ends up playing 14 years in the league because that speed just never went away, man. And yeah, okay, I get it. He never emerged as this, elite number 1 wide receiver. You want lead in your passing game. But as we saw, man, 2015 Panthers scores 10 touchdowns. He had some solid years with the Saints where you at least had to put a safety on his side of the field because Lord knows there weren't any cornerbacks that were fast enough to stay in front of the guys. So, Teddy going out there this year, actually one of his more productive seasons now that I'm looking at the numbers. Yeah, 790 receiving yards in 08. That was the most he ever had in his career. Definitely, was always trying to pull there for Teddy. Only other guy I'd bring up that you didn't mention was Kevin Falk, the scat back for the Patriots, before Ridley and before, some of these other guys that they had going on in New England. I mean, Kevin Falk, just PPR cheat code. And I know over the years I've done some, studies where I look back at the top Patriots running back. Trying to crack that code was always difficult. And you would see Kevin Falk, just really get there through rushing and receiving. And because I think at that time we didn't necessarily give running backs the credit they were due as receivers, you'd always kind of write the guy off. But then you look up at the end of the year and he's got 900 plus yards from rushing and receiving. And again, catching 40 to 50 balls. Like, he made some really important catches, I know, for the Patriots over the years. And obviously was someone Brady, and in this case, Castle, could always trust. So yeah, man, that pass catching Patriots running back, James White ended up kind of being the more modern day version of balling out. But before him, man, we got Kevin Falk.
The prototype, the one for that first 8 years there, and for Brady there in New England. Into the fourth quarter, Patriots within 2 scores until, the first play of the fourth quarter. Ronnie Brown up the middle, and the only person between him and the end zone is Deltha O'Neal. It seems like the play design worked then. Brown with the truck stick, which I think had been in the recently introduced in Madden truck stick at that time. And then the final 50 yards, no one's catching him. Ronnie Brown to the house.
Well, how about the cheap shot by Ricky Williams on that play?
On Vrabel. Vrabel was not happy.
I don't blame his ass, dude. Like, Ronnie's 20 yards past anyone else at this point, and Ricky cut blocks Vrabel like 15 yards behind the play. Of course, Vrabel was fierce. Vrabel's caught some strays over the years, man. He had that play going on, and there's another Marvin Harrison Sr. caught a touchdown against the Patriots one year, and then literally spiked the ball. I don't think he even meant to, but he spiked the ball and it went straight into Vrabel's face. So just funny seeing Vrabel on the wrong side of some of these plays. But yeah, man, ended up getting offsetting penalties. I don't know how the touchdown counted, honestly, because I guess Vrabel got. I'm looking at the game log right now. Vrabel got unnecessary roughness, I guess, for retaliating, but that should have been after the play. The Ricky Williams cut block was completely unnecessary.
Good 20 yards ahead of the defense. A cut block 30 yards downfield. You don't see it that often.
I guess maybe it was legal back then. They hadn't gotten rid of it yet. That's probably what happened, but it was just so far behind the play. What are you doing, Ricky?
Unfortunately for Vrabel and quite a number of other Patriots there, that game, Richard Seymour included, Bruschi retired. A bunch of these Patriots from that first run of the dynasty and that defense are gone soon thereafter. Does it seem like this is a signal for the end of that first wave of Patriots defensive players in that dynasty?
Certainly didn't help matters. I will say, I can only imagine what practice was like, for the Patriots the next time they played the Dolphins that season. The Patriots ended up, romping them 48-28. I'm looking at the stats right now. Yeah, Ronnie Brown, 10 carries, 37 yards. Ricky only had 21 on 6. So they got to figure it out. It was a relatively down year for the Patriots defense that year, but man, this was still a pretty damn good team. So, these guys that were still on the squad and had kind of been around for the trio championships earlier in the 2000s, we're getting a little bit long in the tooth anyway. But again, even without Brady, even with this, lowly week 3 performance, this was still the league's 8th ranked scoring offense and scoring defense on the season. So yeah, afterwards, again, started to see a little bit of a changing of the guard in terms of personnel, but probably just more time than anything. We saw Belichick, really throughout that, 2 decades of dominance, continuously kind of have different versions of the team kind of emerging. So whether it was offense or defense, kept, moving guys in and out. But yeah, man, certainly more mortal than we had seen the Patriots look in quite some time.
You do have some young players, some that they'd stick with a while, some that they wouldn't. On that long Ronnie Brown run, you see Gerard Mayo getting toward the hole, and then Brennan Merriweather torpedoes Mayo. And I don't remember how much longer Merriweather was with the team. I know he ended up with Washington after, but Gerard Mayo would stick around and herald the next era there.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah, and I'm not sure who made the tackle attempt. Like you said, the trucks. We'll give Ronnie the truck stick, but man, that was a pretty horrific tackle attempt too. So at a minimum, I think the big takeaway there was, yeah, those linebackers and safeties had to work on their run fits because they were certainly not where they needed to be that game.
PFF's lowest graded player in this game, though, rookie Gerard Mayo, but he
Oh no,
Vrabel just above Gerard Mayo. One guy with pretty good grade there, though, Rodney Harrison.
ooh,
I mean, how shocking was it to just see Bill Belichick schematically thrown out of whack and unable to get his players. I know Bill Belichick post-game was talking about how they outplayed us and outcoached us, so not all the players. But did that game make Belichick seem mortal to you for the first time since 01?
Yeah, man, because we'd seen again, just him out conniving, Peyton Manning and just every single great offense out there. And then to get a group that we don't even think is good at all to actually come out there and outsmart the man scheme wise. I don't think Bill let it happen really again, at least to that extent, ever afterwards. So certainly made a lasting impression with him. But yeah, that was actually one of the final games Rodney Harrison played. Looking at his game log now, it looks like sadly season ended on IR after week 7 that year. But I would just remember Rodney Harrison after they beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl, and Freddie Mitchell had been talking all kinds of shit before the game. He made some big plays in that run, 4th and 25, wherever it was. Sorry, Packers fans. But yeah, and it was like after the game, some Patriot got asked about Freddie Mitchell, and there's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Rodney Harrison had more catches than Freddie did today. So maybe he can, quiet down a little bit now. But yeah, man, I mean, again, the Teddy Bruschi's, the Mike Vrabels, I mean, it was a great question you had again, just about this kind of being towards the end of all those players. So again, I don't know that game specifically caused the end of some of their careers, but 2008 certainly was, starting to be the changing of the guard of what were truly just some incredible defenses. I mean, they changed those Patriots defenses. I mean, I know you remember it, man, that Colts Patriots in Foxborough when they just beat the shit out of those Colts receivers, in 04 when Peyton threw freaking 49, 50 touchdowns that year. Like they were rewriting the records book, and then they lose 20-3 or whatever it was and can barely get off the line of scrimmage. Like they actively had to change their rule book because of how badass this Patriots secondary was out there. So, I mean, that was the, argument, at least early on before 07, Tom Brady was considered this like more game manager, clutch, but getting by with the better defense than offense. And then it's like, okay, well, they gave Brady good weapons for once, and he throws 50 touchdowns and breaks Peyton's record. So I guess we could put that to bed at that point. But yeah, man, Rodney Harrison, absolute dog. Dude, I'm looking at just side note. Holy, this is amazing. Rodney Harrison played 9 playoff games for the Patriots, and he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He had 7 interceptions in 9 playoff games with the Patriots. That is bonkers.
Deion Sanders going to the Niners or Sanders going to the Cowboys are probably the top 2 people think of. But Harrison going to the Patriots might be a close third.
100%, man.
And on the offensive side, one that wasn't expected and ended up really delivering, Wes Welker to the Patriots in 07. In 08, here on this broadcast, they're still referring to him as another player that was average before he went to the Patriots. But were you thinking of Wes Welker as someone who had already established himself as a great slot receiver and could do so in any team going forward on the Broncos?
Yeah, I'll say, during this time, I was certainly more, probably middle school, just kind of enjoying football. Didn't quite have my analyst hat on during those days, but it was just the beginning of Welker just becoming this year after year stud, from New England and then even briefly into those Denver Broncos years. So I just remember being sad because one of my favorite low key Madden teams back in the day was those early 2000 Saints squads, because we had Aaron Brooks, Deuce McAllister, Joe Horn, and then their wide receiver 3 was Dante Stallworth, who before Madden changed all their ratings around, like you could just speed killed in those games, and Dante Stallworth was 97 speed, faster than everyone else. So I remember like when the Patriots, they got Randy Moss, Wes Welker, and Dante Stallworth in that offseason, and I was like, oh man, Stallworth is about to be the one really changing this because of how fast and obviously distant third option on those squads. But he still did his thing out there for a bit. But yeah, man, Wes Welker, I mean, just really went out there and proved that you could be this, short white slot receiver and still go out there and make, all kinds of things happen. So I guess Welker, man, the thing he really changed is just I could be a little off base here, but probably different times and stuff, but we just didn't see primary slot receivers put up the sort of numbers that he was, able to get going. Like, yeah, Brandon Stokely on the Colts, did some good things as well. But, just to see Welker going out there, and I know defenses were far more concerned with what Randy Moss was doing than Welker on the field, but man, you just see 112 catches, 111, 123 from, 07 to 09. I mean, Welker, I think before he got the Patriots, at least, was certainly viewed as more of this, gadget kind of kick returner guy. It's like, no, he can actually just be one of your starting 3 receivers and accordingly make all kinds of things happen. I mean, let's see, when they did the trade, they got back, all right, so Walker got traded for a 2nd round pick and a 7th round pick. I'm actually surprised that he went for that much, just kind of considering what he'd done at the time. So he still warranted a 2nd and a 7th, even though he was undrafted and hadn't done all that much in Miami. So smart move by Belichick, I guess, to see how much he could get out of the guy.
One of his players this game, Gerard Mayo, the successor to Belichick. How fun is it to see just this rookie out of Tennessee at the start of his career, and then as far as thinking about one's own age, now he's a head coach in the NFL, and you've been, prime NFL watching age throughout the whole span of that.
Oh, dude, it's freaking bonkers. I still can't believe, they said after the fact that he had been kind of being groomed to be the next head coach, but it's just so rare to see someone who has never actually, gone out there and really held an overly prominent coaching job now just get to really bump up to be, the full-on head coach. So, he wasn't even the D coordinator, right? He was just kind of chilling as the linebackers coach. So, hey, man, we'll see what happens, but it really is, I was recording AFC's team previews with my guy Dwayne McFarland earlier today, and we're doing this thing where we're trying to equate each team to like a different movie or a TV character. And for the Patriots, I said they were 0 from holes because it's just a team that has had no new personality ever since Brady left, and then now in the absence of Belichick and them going on Gerard Mayo, it doesn't feel like a different team. It doesn't feel like a different changing of the guard, and I kind of wonder if they're just going to get more of the same results. So hey, I'm sure the defense will stay badass. They certainly have been even last year, when the team didn't have success, still very good defense coming out of New England. But yeah, man. And I'll say this, as I think in all facets of life, it's not that there are plenty of successful football content people that haven't played the game. I'm sure there's some successful coaches that didn't as well, but it helps. You know what I'm saying? And I think, in a locker room, man, it's going to be a lot easier for those players to look up to someone like Gerard Mayo. And it's like, oh, yeah, I grew up watching this dude, seeing him crack some skulls, over the middle and all that stuff. So certainly rooting for the guy, and hell of a story. 38 years old, head coach of the Patriots. Wow.
On the Miami side, we got McDaniel today, still going for his first playoff win. Do you think that he'd get a Gatorade bath for the first playoff win? like the last Gatorade bath, Tony Sparano after this game here?
Man, this probably deserves it, man. Since 2000, again, that is just such a ridiculously long streak. But they actually got, remember the vape game in 2022 when they had to start freaking what was his name?
Was it Skylar Thompson?
Yes, Skylar Thompson. They lost the Bills 32-29 in Buffalo. I think there was a defensive touch.
They're frisky.
They're frisky. It got down the wire, if McDaniel would put the vape down and been able to get the play calls in a little bit quicker, who knows what would have been happening there. But, I think at the end of the day, in, going back and looking like this too, you do see so many of these teams have heartbreak after heartbreak before they finally break through. And then after they break through, we're just like, oh yeah, they're a sweet team. Of course that happened. But, imagine Peyton Manning, his freaking playoff stats through 3 or 4 years were absolutely abysmal. And then he finally got over the hump. So, McDaniel, obviously, coming from the Shanahan lineage and just looking at what the Dolphins offense have done over the past 2 years, even if, this is or isn't the year where they finally get that playoff victory, it's hard to deny the dude is one of the brightest minds out there coaching right now. And how young is he too? Looking up right now. 41. Yeah, so this dude's going to be around a long time, and I'm excited to watch his offenses, man.
This has been another episode of Remember That Game. Please rate, review, subscribe, and check out more episodes.
That's the sound of your current hype level at the gas pump. But brace yourself for something fuel nominal, because Unleaded 88 is about to take the hype to a whole new level. Unleaded 88 is cheaper, cleaner, and greener than regular unleaded. Plus, it's homegrown, making Unleaded 88 the clear choice at the pump and totally worth the hype. So pump it up with Unleaded 88, brought to you by Iowa Corn.